If you go back to a book in 5 years and you just see a bunch of animals and trees,
then I know, but it's not on every page, it's just on really, really important passages. Then I know, oh, there's an elephant. That must be important. Oh, there's a whale. Key passage.
Welcome to Classical Etc. You are in the studio with Memoria Press.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Classical Etc. I'm Jessica Aboud, and I am here with the Core Four, Paul, Tanya, and Martin. We are friends on this podcast and outside of it, but we did not coordinate our outfits today. And if you are watching on YouTube, every single one of us has a different pattern on. We've got stripes, paisley, something else, and farm animals.
Farm animals over here.
So next time we need to circle the wagons, people. We look crazy.
Or take it back to a podcast.
That's right.
Which should be audio.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't do my hair today either.
Yeah. Well,
I literally.
I really worked hard on it. Yeah.
And it shows.
Thank you.
Oh, so however this comes across visually, we're at least going to have a good time. So, today we're going to answer a listener question about journaling and note-taking from Amy. But before we get to that, how's our reading going? The fall swing is kind of weighing us down, but
mine's boring.
Oh, really?
Yes, because it's still the unselected journals of Emma M. Lyon. I'm on number 7 and I just can't stop. So I thought I'm going to stop after number 6 and read Anne of Green Gables. Mm. And so I started Anne of Green Gables and I'm about a third of the way through and thought, I've got to go back to Emma. So now I'm reading volume 7 and Anne of Green Gables. And this weekend I had to reread Persuasion because I'm doing a book group with Jessica Watson at Crescent Hill on Thursday.
I saw a couple people in the YouTube comments when you talk about Emma M. Lyon. A lot of people read her, I think. We've gotten lots of comments. Yeah.
I don't know how to look at the comments.
Oh, we'll show you.
But so if anybody needs, I did get it.
That you're reading her.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's fun.
They are so good.
Yeah.
And it's hard to put them down. So,
but aren't there many? Because someone said there's okay,
but some of them are so short. You know, it started with a 120-page one. So, but they have gotten longer and bigger, and they're charming, and you just get really interested in her life and what's going to happen. You all would not like them.
I was going to say,
you might.
I would like to balance out what Tanya's reading with my reading of Daniel Boone. Oh man, it's gritty.
Was he who we thought we were told he is, or were you surprised?
I mean, there's details of his life that are surprising. I mean, there was a time. I mean, after they found Boonesboro and a couple of the young girls get carried off by Indians, and then he tracks them, and that story is just. I mean, it's flabbergasting, right? I mean, they're tracking them for days. The girls are doing everything they can to leave clues, and they've got testimony where like the girls would smash a weed and then the Indians would try to get that weed to stand back up because they said Kentucky's forest was so vibrant that it was very easy to track something because as you went through, you were leaving clues and the girls knew that and the girls were like, Daniel's going to come for us.
Were these his daughters?
No.
Who are they?
Well, they were, that book, Oh, Kentucky, that I started reading, which was about this is going to drive me crazy because I recognized the name. If you went through like the early Kentucky settlers, you'd happen on them.
People in his community.
Yeah, people in his community out of Boonesboro.
Okay, just his community.
It was his community, but because he was known as the tracker, right? Like he was the one and he knew Kentucky like the back of his hand. And when they got close, he actually told the dad, because the dad was a hothead, like, why don't you try to divert him over that way? Even though Daniel probably knew like where he was going to find the Indians, he got the dad as a hothead away so that they could probably more easily get the girls. And just that story, I mean, you just realize, I mean, that the humanity of it, but also like their life was, I mean, at one point, I think the author says they went seeking land and adventure and opportunity, and most of them met with disease and destruction. Like, I mean, that's just, that's what it was, but that's what they they went there knowing that could be the possibility. They founded, the communities there. And also, I mean, the interaction between the Indians and the settlers is fascinating. And just how, like, when those girls got kidnapped, like, the Indians could speak English. They were speaking with them the whole time. They treated them. I mean, they obviously they had them tied up and whatever. But the girls, there's one story where one of the girls was maybe like doing her hair, and the Indian asked her to do his, and she did it for him. And there's a story later on where, like, that girl, she grew up, and one of her nieces was like, I'd never be able to do that for an Indian. And she was like, oh no, you would. They were very nice to us. And just all of those stories of the humanity, but then how it all gets caught up in the Revolutionary War. It's all fascinating.
So have you figured out who the author is yet?
I could whip out my phone and I could tell you right away. And I saw it the other day and I thought, ooh, I got to remember that. And I don't remember.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. And, it's interesting reading Western literature and their ability to track, which they called reading sign, and what they could tell in terms of whether there were two people on this horse they're tracking or one, or whether the horse was running or just walking, how old the tracks were. It is amazing what some of these trackers knew how to do. It's really, really astounding.
Yeah.
What are you reading?
I feel like I have to have another new book every time I come here, and I just can't take the pressure of this anymore.
Yes. I mean, I've been reading 8 volumes of the same book.
We had 6 months of War and Peace, remember?
We did have.
This is your choice, okay? But
you never finish a book.
Oh, I do finish a book, but I'm usually reading several books at a time. So, it's what I read whatever I want to when I want to read it. And that's the best way to do it. But what do you do when you're reading books? Because you've read books that you wouldn't necessarily recommend to other people because there's things about it that are, there's some ethical issues going on in there maybe, or certain people's behavior. So I'm reading... I'll just say I'm reading Christopher Marlowe, one of the Christopher Marlowe detective novels, one of the old classic 1950s detective novels by Raymond Chandler, and with several of which were made into movies with Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall. The Big Sleep is what I'm reading right now, and I find Raymond Chandler, and there are. It's sort of the underworld in Los Angeles in the 1950s and Hollywood and the corruption of Hollywood. So there's a lot of that in there. So I don't necessarily recommend that to people who aren't really mature readers. But I tell you, Raymond Chandler is one of our great prose stylists. The way he writes, it's spare, it's muscular, he's sort of the cynical personality because of what he's seen in Hollywood,
But it's for adults.
But it's for adults, definitely for adults. But we've talked about this before, and I think if you're and I try to think about this, you do have to be a mature reader. Right. You need to understand what an author's doing, why he's doing it. And you can find truths even in stories that are about where there are a lot of evil things happening.
Right. And a good author is not necessarily going to
dwell on it.
Right. They're not going to condone it. They're not going to dwell on it in a way that makes you sit there and contemplate it. Like they can present to you the reality of what's happening. That furthers the story without.
Right, exactly. And Raymond Chandler, I grew up in Southern California, and some of the places he talks about I've been to, and, I can just hear LA. I can smell LA in there. And that's the case with, a few other books that I've read and a couple of TV shows too. But yeah, I think Raymond Chandler is just a brilliant writer.
Okay.
Recommendation.
Yeah.
Except it's not really a recommendation.
Yes.
It's not. It's just a commentary on what you're reading.
Yeah, it's when you read a lot of books, you can read a lot of books.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you can assess them in a way that you couldn't. You wouldn't give this to a teenager or even an adult who's not widely read,
or an adult who's more sensitive.
Yes.
Some people just don't want.
I mean, my wife would not like she would not want to read it. There's too much seediness
Mm-hmm.
in the setting of that time and place. But that was a real time, and that was a real place. And the book speaks truths. You know.
It's a series?
Oh, a whole Christopher Marlowe series: The Big Sleep, The Little Sister, Farewell, My Lovely. That was also Robert Mitchum, and I forget who the actress was. Those were most of his books. I think were made into classic Hollywood films. Yeah.
Okay. Got a lot of variety here.
Really.
Good though. Yeah.
But I
From
tell
the
you,
prairie to the
That's right.
Jane Austen, I could just pick Jane Austen up and just peruse her prose.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can just pick it up and start in the middle of a chapter even. And it's just charming and real and just beautifully, beautifully written. It's just amazing, good prose. I mean, she has good stories too.
I got Persuasion and Mansfield Park up there, and
Ready
nice
to
volumes
go.
ready for me to read because I haven't read those two.
I'm going to reread Sense and Sensibility now because I haven't read it for a long time.
Well, I think I read that one too, but I love the movie with Emma Thompson.
Yes,
oh
the
my
movie
gosh,
was
that was
good.
a really good movie.
Well, let's get to the listener question, the topic of the day. This is from Amy. Amy wrote us to our inbox, and you can too. It's podcast@memoriapress.com. So send us your questions. And Amy's question is about journaling. And she begins by telling us that she's been binge listening to the Classical, Etc. podcast in the midst of having her first baby. She says she's been listening since he was born, and he's 3 months old now. So congratulations, Amy, on your son. She says it would be a joy to hear a podcast on note-taking, commonplace books, outlining, journaling, etc., as well as an episode on how to position your preschool child to thrive in classical education, since she says it's truly a lifestyle. And we'd agree with you, Amy. So this is a two-parter. She has a question about note-taking and journaling, and then the question about her preschooler, how to prepare him. So let's take the first question about the place of journaling and note-taking in the classroom and in education. She uses a phrase that I would like someone to define. Tanya, can you just explain what a commonplace book is? She asks about that, and I don't know that everybody uses one or even knows what that is.
Right. It's really, I used one before I ever even heard of the term. It's a book that it's like a journal, but what you put in it is quotes from books that you've read that you think are beautiful or that just speak to you, or it's really your companion to whatever book you're reading. And it's a compilation of the best things that you found in a book. And it's work to do because it hurts my hand to write because my penmanship is so awful. So I find it really, I do it. I have a commonplace book, but I find it painful to write like a long quote in it. I really need to work on my pencil grip.
Yeah.
But
your penmanship is...
I know. Well, look at I can hardly read that.
Well...
Yours is not any better. But it's also, so we sell a commonplace book that we have named the Vade Mecum.
What does that mean?
It means go with me. And so it's a book that goes with you. And you put, this isn't mine. I mean, this is obviously a workbook, but because I could, go get it from marketing and use it. But my Vade Mecum at home has all the quotes from the books that I've been reading, that things you don't want to forget, or they could be thematic. They're hard to. I haven't found, and maybe people can help us. I've not found a good way to organize mine, like say Moby Dick. I've got some great quotes from Moby Dick that are on particular themes, but not your general theme, that you would like home. So you could have a little spot in here for quotes about home. But what I find happens is I'm filling mine out in the order chronologically of the books that I read. So nothing really is flowing together well. And so if I want to say I want to do a speech on home or sacrificial love or something, I have to go back through the entire thing to find those quotes. And we've even talked about it at school because we're using them with our students now. And we've talked about like indexing the sides of them. I don't know. Do you all have do you keep one?
Okay.
I can tell you Paul probably doesn't.
Golly, that rubber hurt.
Am I right?
You are correct.
I used to do that, and I have a stack of old notebooks that have just thoughts that I wanted to put down. But I find myself now, because I've got outlets, blog and social media and all that kind of stuff, that I put them on there now. Most of the kind of remarks I would make would, they're good tweets or whatever. So I don't keep them there. And actually I can find them better there than I can find them in, because they're not organized in any subject way or anything like that. And then sometimes when I have something I want to blog about or whatever, I'll go, and I can't think of anything, I'll go back to my old notebooks, and I will pull something out from there and maybe expand on it or whatever. But
so now, are these quotes from books that you put in? They're your thoughts.
Some of them are. Some of them are. Some are
just
my
your
own
thoughts about it,
about things. Yeah. But I think, and I had, I always kind of bristle at words like journaling, outlining, note taking, adulting. You heard that one?
We're verbifying things.
That's called verbing, which of course is an example of what it describes, right?
Exactly.
I call it verbing, which is promiscuously used in our language anymore. It's fine as a personal tool, right? Of getting down your thoughts and maybe thinking more about them later.
You're saying journaling, not verbing. Journaling.
To keep a journal.
Okay.
Infinitive. To keep a journal and then to maybe go. But what I found is I never went back and did anything with them. I would write all these things down. Now, I think the exercise of writing it down helped you remember it, but I never went back and looked at them. So was that useful? I don't know. But
I do think journaling is useful to people as adults. What we discourage, I think it wouldn't work for me.
I would also say it can be helpful on a personal side as a child, but it's not something you would do in school.
I was going to say, I think Amy's context is probably in the academic setting.
I think, okay.
So personal things aside.
Okay, here's a problem. Okay. And I'll say why I think journaling is
in an academic setting
is a problem in an academic setting. Because I think what kids need to learn in writing, particularly early on, is organization, and to learn how to write something in an organized way. If you just have them journal and there's no restraints, they develop bad habits and there's nobody there to correct them. And because of that lack of restraint, they will say things that they don't need to say. They just need to stifle it in their own minds. Because I remember picking up, I won't name any children in particular, but picking up some journals that they were keeping as a part of their school at that time. And it was complaints and it was cynicism. And their voicing that back to themselves was destructive, in my opinion. So I think that in terms of the academic thing or an assignment or something they're supposed to do for school, I think it needs to be a more formal process than journaling.
And if we leave them each to do their own little creative thing in a classroom, then everybody's done something different. We don't have that shared experience. They've misspelled all over the place. They haven't capitalized or punctuated. I mean, at this point when they're young, we need to model everything for them and not ask them to do things that they're not capable of doing or to write in a way that they're not capable of. But for adults, keeping a commonplace book outlining, note taking. I mean, my process is, it's work, but it does force me to contemplate what I've read. And so, and for older students. So we're starting bookmarking in the third grade. So our students are bookmarking beginning in the third grade.
And that means they're learning how to write in their book? Or what do you mean by bookmarking?
In their novel. Yes.
They're underlining, highlighting.
They're learning how to do that.
They're underlining vocabulary words and putting squares around characters. And that's all they're doing really in third grade. But in fourth grade, we start giving them, this is a beautiful sentence. Let's all underline it. And this is the thesis of this book right here. So we're going to underline it, and then we're going to put the vertical line, and then we're going to star it, just trying to teach them to spot those things, but we are pointing them out. And by sixth grade, they are keeping a Vade Mecum, but it is totally managed by us. So we've tabbed their Vade Mecum.
And it's only quotes. This is not a creation of
quotes.
Their own.
That's right. They don't put any of their own thoughts in here. It is literally just the evidence for a particular theme in what they're reading. So our sixth grade teachers have gone through and said, these are the main themes we want. I mean, you could have all kinds of themes, but they do have a little miscellaneous at the back where they can go away from these themes if there is something beautiful. But the students do not write in their Vade Mecums without telling the teacher first, I think this is beautiful. And the teacher saying, I agree, or that's not really beautiful. And then they have a discussion about it, because it could be something like, from a famous men book, some really violent scene or something that really impressed a boy. That's not really what we're looking for, right? It's always a boy. And so we're helping them to discern when they're not really able to do that themselves. And then once they get to middle school, hopefully they will be more, again, we're continuing to bookmark, and they have more choice over what goes in their Vade Mecum. We give them more independence as they mature. And after we've modeled it for them for all of these years, which is how we do everything.
Do we teach them? I know she specifically asked about note-taking. What you described is probably part of that. There might be a couple different things that come to people's minds when they think of note-taking. They might think of a lecture and then what do I record? Or I think that kind of has a lot of different shades to it. Do we teach in our classrooms, do we teach children how to take notes?
Yes, but we're modeling it for years. And when they get to middle school, at that point, we start really working on it more. But we still, 7th and 8th grades, we're still putting the really important things on the board and modeling that. But then by high school, if we still are giving them clue, it will be this, what I've just said is very important. And each teacher will come up with their own way of letting the students know, you better write this down. Or they could say, you will see this again.
Yeah, and it's a lot different process. I mean, I know a lot of people who they read a lot of books on Kindle or something, and they just highlight them. Boom. There's something different about writing it out longhand, writing the quote out longhand, as opposed to just, what do you call it? Highlighting it. In an electronic form. There's something about the physicality of the physicality of the process that if you're trying to, that would be the first thing I would do if I was memorizing something, for example, is write it out and then continue to write it out if I really want to memorize it. But I just think that interaction that goes on between the body and the mind when you're writing out a good quote is valuable. But
there's also like when you're listening to a lecture and you're trying to take notes, or if you're reading a book and you're going to underline or highlight something, and if you just put a couple of words about what that quote is over in the margin, right? What you're doing is you're synthesizing, right? And that's sort of the mental process that's really helping it stick, and they've done research on this, that students who type their notes, like if they take a laptop to the class and they type their notes, that they actually walk out with a whole lot less in their heads, even though they may have much more extensive notes, because they're able to keep up with the professor because they're typing faster. They're not actually doing any summary work in their head. They're not synthesizing anything. Whereas if they write by hand, because writing by hand is by nature slower, they have to take that information, condense it down into something that they can write in the time that the teacher's still talking, right? And so when it comes to note taking, or and that's why the underlining of Kindle is unhelpful, is because you're literally just underlining and moving on. Like you're not actually doing some work to synthesize that, right?
Yeah.
Which is why I have to take, after I finish a book, which you think sounds very tedious, and it is tedious, I go back through the book and look back at everything that I've marked. And at that point, I do make notes in another book that is not my Vade Mecum. In the Vade Mecum, I just put my favorite quotes, but I will actually go, like Moby Dick, I went all the way back through that huge thing, and I just kind of put things by theme and page numbers, just because then that really helps me to revisit it. Because as I'm reading and just marking, I won't remember then, because I just keep reading and I get to the next thing, but I haven't really stopped to contemplate it.
I think it also depends on your personality though, too. Like in the way you see things, Tanya, you're very much a, step-by-step person focused on that very next particular step. I look at things more on a larger scale, right? Like I always want to know what the big picture, how's it fit in the big picture? And so
as you're reading,
as I'm reading. And so the sort of the process is different. Now, I mean, I don't keep a commonplace book or a Vade Mecum. I recognize that it's a fault and it's a failing. There's a laziness portion of it. I've never, like when I have done it in the past, I haven't actually used them. And so there's a whole slew of reasons in there I don't do it. But I do think that it is more helpful. Like that sort of practice is helpful to see the big picture. Right, because just like we do in our guides where we've got those quotes and they're like, this quote, you have to know where that fits in the story. That's helpful. But go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, when you said the guides, you had an interesting way of teaching middle school students how to note take using the guide.
Oh, yeah.
Using the guide as your catalyst for that, really.
Yeah, because the up until middle school, right? Our teachers are they're going through every question with the students. And when I was getting to middle school, and I'm like, these kids need to learn how to like jot down what they're hearing, right? And so my method was, when I was teaching like the Iliad, I said, look, the homework you're going to have that has to be filled out. Am I going to go question by question with you in the lecture? No, but we're going to talk about it all. And so if you're active in class and you write answers down to those questions as we go through them, then your homework's done. Like all you have to do is be ready for the quiz.
Plus it centers them in the class, because they've got this list of questions in front of them. And so then they are listening to him because they need to find those answers. They know
what points to listen for in the lecture or in the discussion. And it makes them more active in that discussion and in the lecture. But it's also, for me, it was a way of teaching them note-taking, because eventually they're going to be sitting in front of a blank page and be listening, but they've learned over a couple of years to
discern
with a guide that tells you these are the important things to listen for.
Yeah, and I find I don't take external notes in a book anymore, even in an academic book. I use my own marking system to highlight the things that I want to highlight. And, even underlining something in a book, you come across, you go, oh, and you underline that particular passage, you're mentally distinguishing what those two sentences say and thinking, and you've made the judgment that those are more important than the words around it. Even just that, I think, is making you pay closer attention to the book and thinking things through and being interactive with the book. And then I have, a single line, which is just a good thought And if it's a really good thought, it gets a star. If it's even better, it gets 2 stars, sometimes 3 stars. And then a double line in the margin, which indicates a good quote, something that's not only really a good thought, but it's also quotable and well written, right? And then I've got whales and birds and palm trees in the margin on a really one that really stands out.
What?
Did you draw a palm tree?
Oh yeah,
Martin.
Palm
how
tree.
do you decide what's the difference between a palm tree and a whale?
Yeah. What?
I don't.
No,
It's whatever I'm feeling.
I think you need to not clarify this, because in 100 years when somebody's going through your writings, this is the difference
between the way Tanya thinks and the way I think. There has to be a distinction between.
If you go back to a book in 5 years and you just see a bunch of animals and trees,
then I know. But it's not on every page. It's just on really, really important passages. Then I know. Oh, there's an elephant. That must be important. There's a whale. Key passage.
I really want this scholar in 100 years who's going through Martin's writings and his books of what he's read and his underlining. He's going to be like, he's going to find that there's a distinction that Martin may not have known.
And I hope Amy comes away from this episode learning at least, hey, Amy, do you? Like, what's happening? Like, do you?
That's what I'm doing. I'm doing me. But then I also will write a 1-sentence summary of that page at the top. So I have to think through all the stuff on that page together and write some summary of it. And it's just ways to interact with the text that will help you to remember the thoughts.
Yeah, and hopefully we can bring some clarity to say, like, with our guides in the way they scale up and the way you give this student freedom to, read a book and jot those down without having the teacher walk them through everything as they get older. And then in upper school, it's even less. Like, we have a progression on how that, how the student grows into that. Obviously, Martin's note-taking now is different from Tanya's, which is different from mine, because we're all different adults and we all have work to kind of figure out what works for us. And so while we would say not every adult needs to draw palm trees in their books, the Memoria Press curriculum does have a trajectory to teach students how to effectively take notes, highlight good quotes.
That's right. It is a teaching process. And the same thing for many people love their journals and it means something to them. Do you journal?
I do. I do.
So you can talk to that. I'm not a journaler. I don't
you just verbed.
I'm not a journaler.
Conniption.
She nouned.
She verbed.
No, she nouned. Journaler.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Am I a journaler?
But
I think
equal and opposite bad.
I don't think there's harm in that at all. I think it can be very helpful to people. And I know, I've got friends who their journals mean a lot to them. And I, as a child, had a diary with a little key. I never used it well, but
so
a
if
lot
it
of
helps
girls
you
do
process, live free.
That's right. Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't ever discourage anybody from doing that. I would discourage that as an academic exercise, though, for children.
Yes.
Even high school. I have sat in so many high school classes, literature classes, or the beginning of the day of a class where the teacher says, here's your question of the day. And so go ahead and make your journal entry about that. And it's usually mundane things that are silly, that are just not a good use of time because nobody's ever looking at it. You see the teacher then having to say, can you not think of anything to say? Because there's this, 16-year-old boy sitting there who does not want to write down what happened to him yesterday. So it's just, it can be painful. I think it's a very personal thing, and nobody's ever going to look at it and make it better. Nobody's going to, why bother? What's the purpose of it as a child in a classroom? But I don't want to discourage students from creative writing at home. If they, if they want to have a journal and they love to write a story or tell a story, I just
as long
really
as it
discourage it.
As long as it doesn't create bad habits and imprint them on their
which is
practice by doing them over and over again with nobody ever correcting.
Right,
That's
which it is going, if that's all you're doing, then you're not going to become a writer.
Yeah.
You're not going, if nobody's editing your work, you are not going to learn to write.
Well,
because writing is something that is best learned through apprenticeship, right? Like,
and through
you-
imitation.
Yeah.
Which
And
is why
that's
quotes
why
are
we
important.
have so many copybooks. And, imitation is a huge part of that young education.
Mhm.
And so we're reading beautiful things. And that's why, the Vade Mecum, the commonplace book, that's why it's so important, is so that we teach students to discern those beautiful things. And then hopefully one day they can create them.
Now, she did ask also about what to do sort of to prepare an infant for education. I'm thinking, well, now that's a little early. But at the same time, and just watching particularly my grandchildren has reinforced this idea, because I think that at least several of our grandchildren could turn a page in a book, which is a very hard, just in this tactile way, and using your
fine
fingers.
motor skills.
Yeah, those fine motor skills. They knew how to turn a page in a book before they could walk.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that and this is where I think the value of physical books comes in. I think young children need to learn the value of a physical book. And I've watched he's 3 years old now, one of my grandkids, and he's probably the most bookish of all of them. All my grandchildren are, but I just remember watching him one day, and he's turning a page in his little bitty fingers, and I'm going, I can't believe he can do that. But it's part of the physicality of a book, and it's a physical, tangible object, and there's beautiful things in it, and you learn that there's beautiful things in these books, and I think that's hugely important because all the real book lovers I know love physical books as well,
but also they were nourished on them from very, very, very young.
Yeah.
Like. This is I saw this. We had my sister's 4 kids for a week recently. And on my 8 and 10-year-old nephews, like my 10-year-old nephew, I think he went through probably 15 books in the week he was with us. I mean, we had those great illustrated classics. I mean, they were abridged classics. And I mean, he was just trucking through them.
Oh, that's fun.
But it would come to bedtime. And the 8 and 10-year-old, they both go get books, or they've been working on books through the day. They grab their books, they go to bed. And, and early on in the week, they're like, would you, come sit in the room with us? Yeah, sure. I grabbed my book. I was sitting there reading my book. They were reading their books.
This is why Paul read this past week.
That was 2 weeks ago. That's how I got, no, I finished like 3 books that week because
they were doing their thing.
Because they were reading, I was reading. Like I had dedicated reading time. But it was a habit that my sister and her husband had instilled. And that's when these kids are bored and they don't have anything to do. What do? They go read.
Instead of turning on the TV.
I mean, they asked many, many times, turn on TV. And I'm like, no. But it's not that if you teach kids to read, they'll never want to go play a video game, right? They're going to want to go do that. But when you say no, they're going to be like, okay, I have some other way to entertain myself, which is reading, which is really setting them up for success in their academics, because reading is the fundamental skill to learning.
And for her, just having her child see her read and how important books are to her makes a difference too, I think. I mean, there would never be a time when my kids had not seen me with a book at some point in the day, even though sometimes I didn't have time to open it. But they knew there was always, that was something that was really important. And I remember that with my parents, they were always reading. That's something I really remember, that all my life was a part of their lives. And that helps as well.
And to have them available. So we have a big basket that it actually is under where the television set is, but which we don't use when the kids are there. And they will go over there. They know where they are. They pull them out. They'll look through to see, and they'll grab one and just come up and sit in your lap.
Ours is we got these big built-in bookshelves, and it's the bottom two shelves. That's kids' books.
Right.
So it's at their height. They can just go grab them.
And we always make sure that they're good books. We don't have many that aren't really in our house.
Well, that's a good point too.
I'm glad
Yes,
you brought
absolutely.
that
Because I have seen some. I don't know why, but I remember not too long ago, and I remember seeing some books in there that we don't need these, you know.
Well, so when we were getting into foster care, people were donating stuff to us.
Yes.
And we had this like stack of books, and Sarah's like, "You're going to want to go through those, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yes, yes, I am." And we threw a good chunk of them out.
It does matter. That's right.
Because I didn't want, because when you have those shelves or the baskets where the kids can just go paw through the books, you want them pawing through treasures and not trash.
Which is that's the problem now with libraries. I used to be able to go to our library and just sit my kids in the middle of the children's section, and it did not matter what they pulled off the shelves. It was safe. And that is not true anymore. And I hadn't recognized until, people were, like at homeschool conventions, when I'm talking to people about the primary program and the read aloud books, and that's a whole separate set. But generally you can just, if you want, like for the science and history lessons, I've said for years, just, you don't have to buy our book about spiders. You don't need that science set. Just go to the library once a week and find a book on spiders. Like, we can't do that anymore. Wow. You can't do it anymore because there's no telling what your kids could pull off the shelf. And that, to me, is a huge problem, but I don't have the answer.
Well, my wife talks about this all the time because we had Carl. I don't remember what Carl's last name was. He was the librarian there, and he number one curated good books. Because they get all this stuff from different publishers of the newest stuff, and he kept that stuff out of there for a long time. And when he left, that library started to change, and you would not want to bring your child in there anymore. That
where you get the spiders. That's funny. Well, that is good advice for Amy. Amy, I hope that was helpful to you. And I hope we get to see, send us a picture of your notes with palm trees in them if you end up taking Martin's approach.
I wrote a great
You had said something good that she could do that you didn't mention on here is classical music.
Oh, yeah. Babies love music.
Yes.
And so put something on that's
you can
enriching.
Do very young, right.
Yeah,
well, and
babies love
also
music.
really good children's music. There's been some great music for children.
Just your traditional lullabies.
Yeah, and yes. And I don't know actually now where you find that stuff. I have old LP records of children's choirs, doing folk music and all this stuff. We have a great tradition of folk music in this country, as well as, and I think they're much more, what?
Martin, you went from, we were talking about the commonplace books, you're like, I don't do that anymore. I just tweet them. And then we get to music and you're like, I don't know where to find that. I go to my old records.
They're there.
It's called
They're
Spotify.
A man of contradictions.
No, I don't think you can. No, I'm sorry. I don't think you can find a lot of the music that I have on old LP records of children's choirs singing traditionally. I bet you that's hard to find on Spotify.
Well, maybe somebody knows and can help us.
Right.
What is it? Podcast at memoriapress.com. Well, please help us.
Maybe next time we'll have a turntable in here. Martin can bring some of his records.
I would be glad
to DJ the episode.
I'm not going to sit in here and listen to children's folk music.
Well, we're going off the rails.
You can only listen to The Wheel on the Bus goes round and round so many times.
Right.
You need something a little better than that.
That's a good one.
Amy, maybe start singing that today.
Now I'm going to be humming it the rest of the afternoon.
But truly, Amy, we appreciate your question. If anyone else has them, again, it's podcast at memoriapress.com. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll be back next time. Thanks for joining us today on Classical Etc. by Memoria Press. If you like what you heard, Please like, subscribe, or share this episode or comment. We love to hear your questions and your comments. If you want to learn more about Memoria Press, please go to memoriapress.com. This has been Classical Etc. We're so glad you joined us, and we'll see you next time.